Good morning. Welcome to the summer webinar series sponsored by the Off-Campus Student and Family Engagement Office. I am your host, Jay Jackson, the coordinator for family engagement. Today's webinar is Fraternity and Sorority Life presented by Jennifer Griffin. Please note the following housekeeping guidelines. As a participant, you are unable to speak directly with presenters, but you may use the Q&A function on the Zoom link and the chat feature on Facebook Live. We are unable to see you all. Your cameras and microphones have been muted for this webinar. Questions will be taken after the presentation. Please ensure that you do not place any personal identifying information in your questions. And if your questions are not answered during the presentation, you may reach out to Fraternity and Sorority Life later on. Once the presentation has ended and the last question is taken, the webinar will end for all participants. Thank you for participating in today's webinar. Here is your presenter, Jennifer Griffin.
Hello, good morning, everyone, and thank you so much to Off-Campus Student and Family Engagement for having me this morning. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen because I do have some slide content that I wanted to share with our viewers this morning. All right, and so like Jamesia said, my name is Jennifer Griffin, and I serve as the Director of Student Involvement and Leadership. And here at UAB, our fraternity and sorority community is a part of the Student Involvement and Leadership team. So it falls under our office, department, an area of oversight here at UAB. And so we do have 2 dedicated staff members that are here to support and provide direct support and advising to that fraternity and sorority community. Those 2 staff members, we have an assistant director for fraternity and sorority life, as well as a coordinator for fraternity and sorority life, again, that are advising those communities and serving as a direct point of contact. And so my goal during our time today is to share with you a little bit about our community, a little bit about fraternity and sorority life nationally, and talk a little bit about what are some reasons for why your student might consider choosing this path or venue in terms of their involvement experience while they're at UAB. And so I actually wanted to start there. You know, I think that when you come to UAB, you have a wide variety of opportunities and even routes that you can go in terms of involvement. But there are some specific reasons why our students choose to go the route of fraternity and sorority life involvement in terms of their experience. And part of that is because of the desire to build a sense of community. Our fraternity and sorority community is a tight-knit community. I'm going to go over the size of that community here shortly, but nationally, we're looking at 9 million total members across all of the affiliated organizations across the country. And so our community here at UAB is much smaller, obviously, but the community that the members receive is not just that from their direct brothers and sisters here on campus, it's their brothers and sisters across the country. And so a lot of students really choose to go the route of fraternity and sorority life as intentionally to prepare them for their future professional endeavors, their future career endeavors, knowing that they might not always be based in Alabama, but they will always be in a place where they can be surrounded by their brothers and sisters who have similar values to them, and those values that are really at the core also serving for the organization that they're a member of. Another reason that students choose to go Greek is due to the resources and support that students who are a member of one of those affiliated organizations receive. So because of the academic supports and the sense of community and the connection to the university that membership brings, those students are more likely to not only be retained at the university from, say, their freshman to sophomore year or their sophomore to junior year, but they're actually more likely to be retained and to actually graduate with a 70% graduation rate nationally for our fraternity and sorority members. Similarly, many of our organizations, if not all of them, have service to the community as a core value. And so being a member of an organization is going to come with an expectation that you are a of service to your community, and that's going to be a part of the fraternal and sorority experience as well. And as a result, our Greek organizations and Greek organizations across the country contribute 10 million hours of volunteer service each year to their local and even national communities. And then another reason is really, I think, unique to the Greek experience in that a lot of times becoming a member in a fraternity or a sorority is a great gateway to other involvement experiences. And part of that is because you are connecting with other students, with other peers who are involved in other organizations. And so it's a great connection to bring a friend along and help them get exposed to other involvement opportunities that exist on campus. Additionally, some chapters even require that. So they don't want the fraternity or the sorority to be the only outlet for that student's sense of community. They want them to have other experiences on campus. And so many organizations will even have a requirement that you have to be involved in something else outside of the chapter as a way to ensure that they are really assisting with the development of a well-rounded student. And so looking specifically at UAB, I wanted to give kind of a broad overview of what our community looks like. I do think it's helpful to know what the fraternity and sorority life landscape is nationally, but thinking about if your students getting ready to become a Blazer, we also want them to know what it means to be a part of our UAB fraternity and sorority community. And so here at UAB in the spring 21 semester, we ended with a community or a fraternity and sorority community that had a total of 928 members. We have 28 active chapters, and I'm going to share with you all this morning what those chapters are and how they recruit or conduct intake for their new members. And those 28 chapters fall within 4 governing councils that we have here on campus. And those governing councils are going to provide support as well as oversight to ensure that the chapters are aligning with their national standards and also aligning with the university's expectations for Greek membership here on campus. Our fraternity and sorority community is made up of about 70% females and about 30% males. And you'll see that within our fraternity and sorority membership. And then, like I mentioned before, we do have 4 governing councils here on campus that I will talk about in just a few minutes. And so the breakdown there in terms of what percentage of the community, we've got about 50% of our community is our Panhellenic sorority members. 14% is our NPHC fraternity and sorority members. About 7.5% is our multicultural Greek organization members. And then about 25% is our interfraternity council members. And again, I'll talk about what chapters make up those councils here shortly. And so when thinking about, again, what students give to this experience as well as what they get out of it, community engagement is a core pillar of our fraternity and sorority community here at UAB, and it's a core pillar of that community nationally as well. But here at UAB, our chapters typically do have a volunteer requirement for their members because that's a core mission pillar for them. They want to make sure that their members are demonstrating a commitment to service through their involvement and outreach to the community. And so that typically looks like the chapter going and serving together a few times throughout the year, maybe even more frequently throughout the year, depending on the organization and even the interest of those members. And so what that looks like on an annual basis is over 14,000 hours of service that our fraternity and sorority community here at UAB is giving back to the local Birmingham community. That service can also take the form of philanthropy dollars raised. So they do a lot of fundraising for philanthropic organizations that have a direct tie to their organization. And so in each organization actually has probably a minimum of one. Some of them have multiple, though. They'll have a national philanthropy that they support, as well as a local or regional philanthropy that they support. And so they'll plan events, as well as service activities, opportunities for them to really contribute and give back to that organization, and sometimes even raise money that they can donate to that organization. And so What that looks like on an annual basis is over $300,000 of philanthropy dollars that have been raised, again, by our undergraduate students that are a part of our fraternity and sorority community. You can see a breakdown of even how those philanthropy dollars fall between council. Please keep in mind as I share these percentages that every council is going to have a different size. They're going to have a different average size in terms of their chapter as well as their new member experience. And I would say that size is not equal to the type of experience a student is going to have. I just think it's helpful for your students to understand what is that experience going to look like? What is this community that I'm considering joining? What is that going to look like? And how many people are we talking about that I'm going to interact with as a part of that experience? So that's really why I share that information. In addition to community engagement, academic achievement and success is a huge priority for our fraternities and sororities. And in fact, every chapter is going to have a minimum GPA requirement in order for them to be able to extend an invitation for membership to an incoming or a new student or a student who's interested. And so I share that so that your student understands that that is going to be an expectation, not only to join, but it's also going to be an expectation that they maintain a certain GPA in order to remain a member in the organization throughout their college experience. And so what I've got here is not the GPA requirement. This is actually what these councils' average GPAs were for the spring 21 semester. And so for the spring 2021 semester, our interfraternity council average GPA for a chapter was a 3.31. The average GPA for our multicultural Greek council was 3.27. The average GPA for a chapter within our National Panhellenic Council was a 2.91. And the average chapter GPA for an organization in our College Panhellenic Council was a 3.37. Our all Greek GPA, so the average GPA for our entire Greek community is a 3.23. And that is pretty significant. I like to talk about that because it is a full point higher than the all UAB undergraduate GPA, which was a 3.12 for the spring 2021 semester. Similarly, we see that our sorority women succeed and earn a higher GPA than our non-sorority women with a 3.37 GPA compared to the all undergraduate women's GPA at UAB, which was a 3.19. And the same goes for our fraternity men. We had an all fraternity GPA of a 3.11 compared to the all undergraduate men's GPA that was a 3.01 for the spring 2021 semester. And so I share this to say this is where our chapters currently stand, but they are going to have specific criteria again for their members. And so that is really specific to the chapter. I would say that even within each respective council, it varies a little bit. It's pretty consistent, and I would say at the very least, the student has to be in good academic standing at the university in order to be in good standing with their chapter. But many chapters are going to have a higher expectation for the GPAs of their members, and they're going to provide support to ensure that the students are able to be successful academically. Our fraternities and sororities understand and even celebrate the fact that our students are here to earn a degree, and they want to support that degree completion. They want to support that success throughout the 4 years in college, with the hopes that these students will earn and be able to identify a career path following graduation. And so they put standards and expectations in place to help support that throughout the student's college experience. I also think it's helpful to have a little bit of information in terms of GPA, specifically about our new member community. And so this past year, we accepted a total of 453 new members to our fraternity and sorority community through those 4 councils. And so you can see here that about 42% of those new members joined our Panhellenic Council, 24% joined our National Panhellenic Council, 12% joined our Multicultural Greek Council, and 23% joined our Interfraternity Council. And again, some of that is really based on the amount of new members that the chapter could take, I would say these numbers are also a little unique this past year due to the COVID-19 pandemic. We did see a little bit of a change in the type of intake and recruitment processes that we were able to do due to restrictions surrounding gathering. And so I anticipate that we had some students who even chose not to participate because it was not going to be like the traditional experience that they expected. And so we're hoping to welcome those students back this coming fall, and to allow them to go through that process so that they can join the community if they intended to do so. Similarly, I wanted to share the average GPA for our new members during their new member semester. And so I know that a lot of times with involvement in general, academic achievement and success can be a concern for our new students in terms of being able to manage multiple priorities and balance their time commitments in addition to what they are managing with their academics. And so I would say as a whole, our fraternity and sorority community really places, again, a lot of emphasis on supporting that academic achievement and even has an expectation that our students or that their members are successful in the classroom. And so we've got their average GPAs again for each of the councils. Do keep in mind that the reason you might see some variation is also because of the number of new members within each of those councils. And so I wanted to dive in and talk a little bit about the councils that we do have represented on our campus. Here at UAB, we have 4 governing councils that really provide, like I said, direct support and oversight for the 28 chapters that we have on campus. Our Interfraternity Council consists of 9 social fraternities and has an average chapter size of 26 members. Our Multicultural Greek Council has a total of 5 fraternities and sororities. So they actually have 3 sororities, 2 fraternities, and they have an average chapter size of 14 members. Our National Panhellenic Council consists of, we have 8 of the Divine 9 chapters. There's in both fraternities and sororities within this council, and the average chapter size within this community is 16 members. And then finally, our College Panhellenic Council has a total of 6 social sororities that fall within it, and the average chapter size within this council is 81 members. So just a helpful overview of what the chapter sizes are. We're going to talk specifically about each of these councils, what chapters fall within them, and how they conduct their recruitment or intake process here shortly. And so we'll start off with the Interfraternity Council. Like I said, this council consists of 9 chapters, 9 social fraternities, and those fraternities include Alpha Sigma Phi, Alpha Tau Omega, Delta Sigma Phi, Lambda Chi Alpha, Pi Kappa Phi, Tau Kappa Epsilon, Theta Chi, Phi Gamma Delta, and Sigma Chi. And one thing that I do want to note, I've got colony written next to both Alpha Sigma Phi as well as Sigma Chi. And the reason for that, those chapters are active organizations that are currently recruiting members. They are recognized by the university, but they are newer organizations on our campus. And so they currently exist as colonies, meaning that they have not officially chartered at the university. Both of these organizations are in the process of planning their charter ceremonies, which is really exciting. And like I said, they have every privilege that the rest of our IFC fraternities have. It really just means that they're a little bit newer to the campus and are still getting established. And so, but again, participate in all of our recruitment activities for this council, host events and activities in the same way that any other fraternity does. And both of these chapters are affiliated to national organizations. Like I said, the average chapter size for IFC is 26 members. The average new member class size for our IFC fraternities is about 13 members. And so typically through the recruitment process and through a student's new member process, they're going to be going through that experience with about 12 other guys. They conduct recruitment, and IFC is here at UAB actually participates in what they call a 365 recruitment model. And so what that means is that technically these chapters are recruiting year round, right? There's not a formal recruitment period, although technically on our campus, we do still host a formal recruitment process. That period of time is kind of ongoing, and they can really take members up until a certain point. I would say the exception to them being able to recruit 365 days a year is there's certain times of year they have to allow or provide enough time for any men that they take in to participate in their new member process and initiate. And they're not allowed to have a member or a group of new members serve as new members over a university designated break. So for example, they could not recruit members in the month, like say at the end of April, have those guys serve as new members over the summer and then initiate them in the fall. They have to do it all within one academic term. But because the chapters, both new member and initiation process will vary by chapter in terms of time, like how long it takes, it is a little bit more fluid in terms of when they can accept new members. With that being said, IFC still does host a formal recruitment in both the fall and spring semesters. And so a student does not have to participate in this formal recruitment process in order to join a chapter, but it's a great way to do so, especially if your student is unsure which chapter is the right one for them. You know, we've got some students that come in and know what chapter they want to join right off the bat. And so they may choose not to go through this formal recruitment process and to be picked up by the fraternity. But going through formal recruitment maximizes your students' options of being invited to join as a member for that semester. And so the formal recruitment process in the fall will take place in September. We're still trying to understand what the university's expectations for gathering are going to be. And so that council is still in the midst of planning those exact dates and even the exact time frame, but the process is typically a week long. We do there's kind of an open house introductory night where they'll come and learn about all of the chapters. Then they'll go and kind of visit those chapters that they really enjoyed a couple times throughout the week. And then we end it with midday. And so great opportunity, even if your student chooses not to join a fraternity through the process, I would encourage them just to go through, and because it's a great way to meet other people and meet new friends and guys that you can really develop a lasting relationship with. Our next council is the Multicultural Greek Council, and we often call them MGC. And MGC consists of 5 chapters here at UAB. And so we have Beta Chi Theta Fraternity Incorporated, Delta Epsilon Psi Fraternity Incorporated, Delta Phi Omega Sorority Incorporated, Sigma Sigma Rho Sorority Incorporated, and Sigma Lambda Gamma National Sorority Incorporated. The average chapter size for our multicultural Greek chapters is about 14 members, with the average new member class size being around 6 members. And so with these students, they are, again, joining a more intimate experience. And so especially if your student is concerned about being overwhelmed with the number of members in some of those larger organizations, a council like this might be a better fit for them. I'd also encourage you and your student, and I'm going to talk about some things that you can do to really continue to understand the fraternity and sorority community and also make the most informed decision about if membership is a good fit for you. But at a minimum, I'd really encourage you to look up these councils, look up the individual organizations to really understand what their values and priorities are as an organization. The Multicultural Greek Council conducts an intake process in terms of how they accept new members. And so they actually do a bit of a hybrid where there's a little bit of recruitment. So they do some open houses. They do some, I guess what you would call recruitment type events, and that they're putting information out there pretty openly and broadly. But then their actual intake process where they are accepting new members and inviting them to participate as a new member in the organization. Their new member process does really operate with a component of discretion, and that they are really meant to be committed and dedicated to that experience through the organization. And so while those recruitment and intake processes are actually hosted individually by each chapter, the Multicultural Greek Council as a whole does offer a kickoff event that they host at the beginning of each semester. They do it in both the fall and spring semesters. And at this kickoff event, it's really a great way. They use it more as, I would say, like an introduction to each of the organizations that are within the council. And so each of the organizations will talk a little bit about their chapter, their, maybe their values or priorities, what's important to them as an organization. They'll talk a little bit about if they're going to be conducting intake that semester, and who the participants can reach out to if they are interested in joining. And they typically host that event in September. And so if your student has any interest in potentially joining one of our MGC organizations, I would encourage them to attend the kickoff event and to be on the lookout for the specific dates and times for that event when they get on campus in August. One other thing about recruitment and intake that I think is helpful to understand is that the organization is also going to go over the process varies a little from organization to organization. And so they're going to cover that really during those interest meetings or information meetings that they're hosting. So those are a great time to also ask questions. A lot of these chapters additionally will have an outline of what their new member process looks like on their national websites. And so you can, if your student is curious about what that process will look like, what's the length of the process, a lot of that information can be found online. Our next council is the National Panhellenic Council. Like I said before, this council does consist of 8 chapters, both sororities and fraternities. And so within NPHC, we have Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated, Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated, Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated, Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated, and Sigma Gamma Rho Sorority Incorporated. So again, we have 8 of the Divine 9 chapters here at UAB within this council. The average chapter size for these organizations, again, is 16 members, with the average new member class size being 13 members. I will share that we have, this is probably the council where I see the most variation in terms of the number of new members that are in a line. And so I'm going to use a couple of our chapters as an example. Alpha Kappa Alpha conducted an intake process this past spring semester and welcomed 69 new members. And so that is obviously a lot bigger than 13, but then in the same vein, we'll have a chapter who is conducting intake and welcomes about 6 new members. And so that's why you see that average chapter size at 13. I would say the average is more on the smaller side, but we have a couple of really our sororities specifically that tend to have larger lines, especially if they've not been able to conduct intake for a while. So in AKA's case, they did not accept any new members in the fall semester. They were really trying to understand and navigate COVID and what their new member process would look like completely virtually. And so they decided to postpone taking a line until the spring semester, which was completely reasonable. But again, so sometimes you'll see some variation in the number of new members that these organizations are taking based on how long it's been since they last conducted intake. I will share that these chapters do not recruit or do not allow new members to join the organization every semester. They get to choose when they are accepting new members. If and when they do, they do communicate that to our office, and so we are able to really serve as a resource to students who are interested in joining a chapter within NPHC. But let me go on and we'll talk a little bit more about how they do their process. So NPHC really follows an intake model in terms of how they accept new members. The one recruitment event that this council does host is called Greek Speak. And Greek Speak is really an opportunity to where any potential new members can come and they will hear a presentation from each of the 8 organizations that I just referenced. And those organizations are going to talk about their membership criteria. They're going to talk about what their priorities are as a chapter, what they're spending their time, energy, and resources doing as an organization. and what even their organization looks like nationally. And so what that allows a student to do, especially a student who maybe is not super familiar with these organizations and isn't sure if it's the right fit for them, it allows them to better understand what are the values of those chapters. It also allows them to make direct contact with those individuals. So there is an opportunity following Greek Speak and even during the actual presentations, where the students are allowed to ask questions about the intake process. Those questions are typically more general for the chapters as a whole, and the chapters can choose to answer and address those concerns or questions that the students might have. But how this is different from the multicultural Greek kickoff that I mentioned, other than it being specific for this council, is that attendance at Greek Speak is required in order for a student to be accepted as a new member in one of these 8 organizations. And so Greek Speak, this community and this council specifically, really values students having all of the information before they make a choice about which chapter is going to be the best fit for them. And so it's important that they come and they hear about what the council is, what the expectations of this community are, and what that experience is going to look like prior to indicating an interest in membership. And so something to keep in mind. And that Greek Speak event will take place in September of the fall semester. They host it in both the fall and spring. And again, it's typically early on. So in the fall, it'll be in September. In the spring, it'll probably be late January. Probably late January. I don't see it going into February. And then finally, our last council is the College Panhellenic Council. And like I had said earlier, this council consists of 6 social sororities, including Alpha Gamma Delta, Alpha Omicron Pi, Alpha Z Delta, Delta Gamma, Kappa Delta, and Sigma Kappa. The average chapter size is a little larger in this council. It's an average chapter size of 81 members, with an average new member class being around 30 members. And one thing that I will share is, so this council conducts consistently, every chapter will accept new members in the fall semester. And that's one thing I forgot to say about our interfraternity council. Similarly, every chapter will accept new members for our IFC community in both the fall and spring semester. In Panhellenic, so in this College Panhellenic Council, everyone accepts new members in the fall. And if there are chapters that have spaces in the spring, they're allowed to accept new members, but not every chapter will be able to do so. This is the one council that actually has a maximum number of members that each chapter is allowed to have. And that number is the same for every chapter. And so depending on how many women potentially graduate in December, or if you have some women that leave the institution for whatever reason, that is really what determines if they are able to take new members going into the spring semester. And so if your student's interested in being a member in one of these organizations, they really need to participate in the fall primary recruitment process. Primary recruitment is scheduled to take place Monday, August 16th through Saturday, August 21st. And this recruitment week, I would say, is more structured than any of the other councils. So every chapter will participate in this experience, and all interested participants. So if you're any women who are interested in being a member of one of these organizations, will need to participate in this recruitment process if they'd like to join. Monday is really it's really an open house. It's where we'll talk about some information and what that recruitment week is going to look like. They'll be assigned, every student participant will be assigned a recruitment counselor. And so in that individual is really meant to help answer questions for your student throughout the week, provide insight about what to expect as they're going and meeting these different organizations. And they'll talk about how each night is different from the one prior. Conversation will change as the week goes on. They spend time talking about their philanthropy, talking about their sisterhood, and then talking about their organizational values and priorities. They'll talk about membership criteria, financial expectations, all of that throughout this recruitment week. And there is a registration that's required in order to participate in our primary recruitment process. And so the registration form is currently live. It's on our Fraternity and Sorority Life website, and I'll make sure to provide you all with a link directly to that. But it's currently open. It'll close on, and actually I should have had that date prepared. Let me look real quick. Registration will close, I believe I want to say it's Friday, August 13th. But that information is on our website as well. There is a $55 registration fee for this recruitment process, and that serves to cover the cost of really just the cost associated with recruitment. We host recruitment, a mixture of both on and off campus. And we provide transportation for the women that entire week to get them where they need to go for the different events and activities that are taking place. We also do provide them with a couple of meals throughout the week and refreshment options. Every participant gets a t-shirt that they can wear on bid day before they're given their new chapters letters. And so again, that fee is something to expect if your student is planning to register and hasn't already. One other thing that I didn't want to finish this presentation without touching on was our hazing prevention efforts. So we all have access to the news, and I'm sure that there have been stories that you've read or heard about that have really articulated, the presence of hazing on college campuses across the country. And so knowing that hazing is something that is rooted in tradition for a lot of national organizations, it's something that we proactively address and educate our both new and active members on. And we've developed here at UAB a hazing prevention and education training. It's actually harm reduction. So it focuses on hazing prevention. It also focuses on bystander intervention as well as alcohol and other drugs. And we offer this training program specifically, and actually we don't offer it, we require it for our entire new member community, that they participate in it during their new member semester. So we want to make sure that they're receiving this information in a time frame when it is relevant, and that we're giving them information about how to identify and intervene if they see hazing while they are in the time period when it traditionally takes place. And so again, this training is required for all of our new members, and there's actually 3 trainings that they participate in during their new member semester. Following their new member semester, they complete the hazing training every year on an annual basis through the university. And I would say that is most times in addition to hazing training that they are also having to complete for their national organization. And so there's multiple touch points where both the university as well as their national organizations are really supporting these organizations in reducing harm to their members, and with definitely a goal to completely prevent hazing from ever taking place on this campus. We do have right under 98% community compliance with this training. So of course, with a community of almost 1,000 students, you've always got 1 to 2 that we're trying to make sure are falling in compliance. I will share that a student is not permitted to initiate into their chapter if they don't complete these trainings. And so that has really helped us with our compliance numbers, and it helps to ensure that the students are getting the information that we need. As a result of the training, student participants reported a 75% increase, that they were better equipped to handle hazing when confronted with it, and 80% felt more committed to preventing hazing as a result of participating in the training. And so we're looking at this data every semester to understand what tweaks or changes do we need to make within the training to ensure that it's having the impact that we intended. But again, really critical component that I want you all to know is a part of our new member as well as ongoing experience for chapter members. And then last, I wanted to end my presentation today with just a few ways that you can really support your student through their fraternity and sorority involvement. And so, especially in this exploratory phase where I'm sure many of you are, what I would ask that you do now is really review the potential benefits that we've talked about of joining a fraternity or sorority with your student, right? And we talked about those benefits being a sense of community, friendships, a venue for involvement, being able to develop as a leader, even involvement in the local or national community, whether it be through service or leadership opportunities. Talk with your student about balancing their time and scheduling and schedule and making sure that they understand that this chapter or involvement in the Greek community is a time commitment. Every chapter is going to have chapter meetings that your student will be required to attend. They're going to have new member meetings during that first semester that they'll be required to participate in. And that's really where they're meant to be learning about the organization and understanding what it means to be a member of that chapter. And so it's important to talk with your student about how they're going to manage those commitments in addition to their academic work, as well as potentially if they're employed or have a job, as well as any family or personal commitments. Additionally, I'd encourage all of you to find ways to get involved within the organization. Chapters typically host, in fact, in conjunction with Meredith's office, opportunities for family members to connect, to learn more about the organization, to get involved with the organization through events and volunteer opportunities. And so I'd really encourage you to look into what are those opportunities for your students' chapter or organization of choice, because your involvement is going to make a world of difference to your student having a positive experience. I'd encourage you to be aware of the importance of academic achievement and talk to your student about their academic progress. And this is kind of whether or not they choose to join a fraternity and sorority. This is important in general, but it's helpful to understand. I think a lot of times when a student is struggling, it's easier to keep it to themselves and to think that they're going to work through it. And so check in with them. You know, the chapter is going to be checking in with them, but at the end of the day, the chapter doesn't know how your student has done until they receive those grades at the end of the semester. And so checking in with your student to make sure that they have the support they need will allow them to be successful both inside as well as outside of the classroom. And then finally, help them think through the risk management decisions that they're going to have to make as an individual on a personal level. And again, this is relevant to our fraternity and sorority community, but it's also just relevant to being a college student. Your student needs to stay informed on policies and procedures so that they are best equipped to make informed decisions as they are doing so autonomously, right? With little to no oversight from their parents or families. And so finally, our office here in Student Involvement and Leadership really wants to be, we hope and strive to be a wealth of knowledge and a significant resource for you and your student through their involvement journey, and that includes the fraternity and sorority experience. And so I encourage you and your students to follow us on Instagram at GetInvolvedUAB. You can email us directly at getinvolved@uab.edu. These emails come directly to my inbox. And so myself or another member of our fraternity and sorority life team will be happy to connect with you and answer any specific questions that you may have. And then finally, a lot of the content that I covered today can be found on our Fraternity and Sorority Life website. You can access that website by going to uab.edu/Greeks. I'll say additionally, some of the events that I mentioned, especially the ones that don't have a confirmed date yet, that'll be a great place for your student to check back over the course of the summer once those dates have been confirmed and published. And similarly, any registration materials or applications that they might have to complete in order to participate in one of these recruitment or intake activities will be available on that website as well. And so that concludes my presentation this morning. I'd be happy to take any questions that you all might have about the information that I've covered this morning, or even if there's information that you feel I've left out. But Jamesia, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Jennifer. I was having to get everything situated. So we have a couple of questions coming in. Let's remember to use the Q&A feature on Zoom and the chat feature on Facebook Live. And one of the questions that we had come in, Jennifer, was, do the fraternities have a specific recruitment week? And I know that, go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. So they do. They have not confirmed the specific dates. It does take place over the course of 1 week, but it is going to be in the month of September. And so that's kind of one of those dates that I'd encourage you to check back on our Fraternity and Sorority Life website, probably towards the end of July, to see when that recruitment week is going to take place. They'll have a registration process for fraternity recruitment. but it won't open until August. So, and the recruitment process itself is several weeks after your students on campus. So they typically wait to host their recruitment process until students have had a little bit of a chance to get acclimated to the campus. I will share that does remind me, the one council that does not, or that hosts their recruitment process prior to the start of classes, is our college Panhellenic council. So the council that has those 6 social sororities, their recruitment process, and I did share the dates, I guess, but that is actually the week prior to class. And so we do work with the students who are going to, or have indicated that they're living on campus. We work with student housing and residence life to allow them to move in early so they can participate in that experience. But yeah, check back on our website for those confirmed dates for fraternity recruitment.
Okay. And can a student join Delta Sigma Theta as a freshman?
So Delta Sigma Theta, like I mentioned before, does have their own specific membership requirements. They typically require that the student be a sophomore by credit hours in order to join. So it's tough to say, can they join as a freshman? Because many of our students come in as a first-year student with lots of credit hours, to the point where they may be technically at a sophomore status in terms of credit hours by their second semester. And so I would encourage you to look into your students. Are they coming in with any credit hours? What's their first semester going to look like? And how will that measure up to Delta Sigma Theta's expectations in terms of recruitment? They do typically wait to conduct intake until the spring semester. That's traditionally when they posted it. And that's been a result of that. They're giving the students time to meet the credit hour requirement so that they can go through the intake process. But I would look at Delta Sigma Theta has a national website where they articulate their membership requirements, and they'd say exactly what that credit hour expectation is.
Okay. And do you have any sorority chapters that aim at multicultural and inclusive goals?
We do. I'd say we've got specifically 3 chapters within our multicultural Greek Council that really do have that as, I would say, a significant pillar of their chapter values and priorities. And so those sororities are Sigma Lambda Gamma Sorority Incorporated, Delta Phi Omega Sorority Incorporated, and Sigma Sigma Rho Sorority Incorporated. So I'd encourage you all to check them out.
Okay. And do we have fraternity houses on campus?
Great question. I can't believe I didn't think to proactively address this. We do not currently have fraternity or sorority houses on campus. So there is no Greek housing component to the fraternity and sorority experience here at UAB. We are uniquely positioned, as I'm sure you all are aware, in the middle of a very urban setting. And so real estate is hard to come by, but that has not been a part of our Greek experience up to this point. The chapters utilize shared community space and event space with the rest of the campus to host their events and activities. You may hear through talking with some of these chapters that they have members who live together, both either on or off campus, but that's not sponsored or paid for by the organization. It's not facilitated through the organization at all.
Got it. Jennifer, thank you so much for this information and for presenting to us today. We have another question coming in. It says, move-in is for August the 16th. You stated that they will be able to move in sooner than August the 16th if they're going through Panhellenic recruitment.
No, August 16th is the early move-in date. And so, yeah, I'm saying that without recognizing. Traditionally, I would say prior to last year, our freshman move-in day wasn't until the Saturday right before classes. So it would have traditionally been on the 21st. But you were right. They have spread out freshman move-in over the course of that first week. But our Panhellenic women will need to move in on Monday, August 13th.
Okay, so they wouldn't move in sooner than August the 16th. Got it.
They would not.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you have any more questions before we conclude the webinar, please go ahead and send them in. I'm going to give us about 2 more minutes for any further questions. If not, we want to thank you for participating in today's webinar. Thank you so much once again, Jennifer, for all your information that you have provided for our families. And we're just grateful. And we look forward to everybody coming in the fall and having a great time.
Absolutely. Thank you all again so much for having me. And yes, please feel free to reach out if you've got questions that that you think of after this morning, know that our team is here and ready and excited to answer any questions. We really just want to ensure that your students have a positive and safe and fun experience while they're a student here at UAB, and fraternity and sorority life is just one of many outlets for that.
Okay. Well, we didn't have any more questions, so you all have a great day. You have a great week. Thank you, Jennifer.
Absolutely. Thank you all. Have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye.